Okay, so you think you know BTS, right? 7 guys from a tiny company that almost went bankrupt? Cool story, but here's the real question. Do you actually know how they make their money? Because spoiler alert, it's not just concert tickets and album sales. Nah, that's barely scratching the surface. We're talking revenue streams so massive, so diversified, that each one individually generates more money than what most entire K-pop companies pull in a whole year. Yeah, you heard that right. A single revenue lane from BTS outperforms whole corporations. So which member turned a solo brand deal into a $100 million machine? Who literally moved stock markets just by showing up? And which one of them built a revenue stream so quietly that nobody even noticed until the numbers dropped and jaws hit the floor? Buckle up, because this list is going to change the way you see BTS forever. Let's get into it.
Number 7. The entertainment content cash machine that nobody saw coming. Alright, let's kick this off with something that might surprise you, because when people talk about BTS revenue, they always jump straight to music sales, tours, brand deals, the obvious stuff, right? But there's this one revenue stream that's been quietly stacking cash in the background like a silent money printer, and it's driven almost entirely by one man's chaotic, hilarious, devastatingly charming personality, and that man is Kim Sok-jin, worldwide handsome himself, the eldest Taehyung of BTS, and honestly, the most underrated business asset in the entire K-pop industry. We're talking about entertainment content revenue. And before you roll your eyes and say, oh, it's just YouTube videos, nah fam, sit down, because this is way bigger than you think. BTS, as a group, operates one of the most profitable content ecosystems in the entire entertainment world. We're talking Bangtan TV, with over 70 million subscribers and billions upon billions of cumulative views. We're talking Run BTS, which started as a casual variety series and turned into a cultural phenomenon that drives Weverse subscriptions and ad revenue on a scale that most television networks would literally kill for. We're talking behind-the-scenes content, travel logs, cooking shows, live streams, and documentary series that get licensed to platforms like Disney Plus and Amazon Prime for deals reportedly worth tens of millions of dollars each. And at the center of all of this content magic, the member who consistently drives the highest engagement, the most viral clips, the most replayed moments is Jin. This isn't just opinion, this is backed by data. Jin's solo content segments on Run BTS consistently rank among the most viewed episodes. His live streams on Weverse pull in hundreds of thousands of concurrent viewers, which is literally more than most cable TV shows get in an entire week. And his clips go viral on social media with a regularity that marketing teams spend millions trying to achieve artificially. Now here's what makes Jin's contribution to this revenue stream so fascinating. He's not doing anything calculated. He's not following some corporate content strategy playbook. The man is just genuinely, authentically, hilariously himself. And that authenticity is what makes the content so addictive and so profitable. Think about it. When Jin decided to do a mukbang series called Eat Jin way back in the early days, it wasn't because some marketing executive told him food content was trending. He just liked eating and talking to fans while doing it. And that series became one of the most beloved content franchises in the entire fandom, generating millions of views per episode and setting the template for what would eventually become a multi-million-dollar content strategy. And then, after his military discharge in June 2024, the content machine went into overdrive. His return was one of the most watched live events in Weverse history. His happy album promotions turned into a content goldmine, with variety show appearances across Korean television that drove viewership spikes so massive that networks were literally competing to book him. And his guest spots on shows pulled ratings that hadn't been seen in years. KBS, MBC, TVN, all of them saw immediate ratings jumps whenever Jin appeared, because the man is a natural-born entertainer who turns every second of screen time into pure pure gold. But here's where the numbers get really crazy. BTS content revenue isn't just ad money from YouTube, it's an entire ecosystem. Weverse, the platform that HYBE built largely to house BTS content, charges subscription fees for premium content access and has over 10 million monthly active users, a significant percentage of whom are there specifically because of BTS content. And within that BTS content universe, Jin is the engagement king. His posts get some of the highest interaction rates, his lives get the most real-time comments, his variety segments get the most replays, and all of that engagement translates directly into platform stickiness, which translates directly into sustained subscription revenue. According to HYBE's own financial reports, their platform and content segment, which is heavily driven by BTS, generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually, and when you break down the engagement metrics, Jin's contribution to that pie is disproportionately massive for a single individual. And we haven't even talked about the documentary and film revenue. Break the Silence, Burn the Stage, yet to come in cinemas. These theatrical and streaming documentaries collectively grossed over $100 million worldwide. And Jin's storylines, his emotional depth, his humor, his vulnerability about topics like self-doubt and military service, these are the narrative threads that critics and fans alike point to as the emotional backbone of these films. The man literally makes content more valuable just by being in it. So yeah, entertainment content revenue might not sound as sexy as a stadium tour or a luxury brand deal, but when you realize that this single revenue stream generates more annual income than what most mid-tier K-pop companies make from all their artists combined, and when you realize that Jin is the secret weapon that makes this content ecosystem so absurdly profitable, you start to understand why HYBE executives probably light a candle of gratitude every single night for the day Kim Sok-jin walked into that audition room, because this man doesn't just create content, he creates money, and he does it while making you laugh so hard your stomach hurts. And honestly, is there anything more Kim Sok-jin than that?
Number 6, the silent royalty empire that prints money while he sleeps. Okay, now we're getting into territory that most casual fans have absolutely no idea about. Because when you think of Min Yoongi, you think of the rapper, right? The guy with the fire mixtapes, the sharp tongue, the cat-like demeanor, the man who goes by August D and burns stages to the ground. But what most people don't realize is that behind that cool, unbothered exterior is one of the most prolific and financially dominant songwriter-producers in the entire modern music industry. Not just K-pop, the entire music industry. And his songwriting royalties and music production revenue constitute a revenue stream so massive, so relentless, so beautifully passive that money literally flows into his accounts every single second of every single day, whether he's awake, asleep, on vacation, or just sitting in his studio staring at a wall. And that, my friends, is the kind of revenue stream that makes even Wall Street investors jealous. Let's break this down with real numbers, because the scale of Suga's production empire is genuinely mind-blowing. Min Yoongi has songwriting and production credits on over 150 registered songs with KOMCA, the Korea Music Copyright Association, and that number keeps growing. And we're not talking about throwaway B-sides that nobody listens to. We're talking about songs that have collectively been streamed billions of times across platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and Melon. And every single one of those streams, every single play, every time someone hits shuffle on a BTS playlist at 3 a.m. while studying, or puts Spring Day on repeat during a rainy afternoon, a fraction of a cent flows directly into Yoongi's account as a credited songwriter and producer. And when you multiply fractions of cents by literally billions and billions of streams, you get numbers that would make most K-pop companies' entire annual revenue look like pocket change. But here's what really separates Suga from almost every other idol producer in the industry. The man doesn't just write for BTS, he writes for everybody, and every single one of those outside productions is another tentacle in his ever-expanding royalty octopus. Let's talk about IU's 8 for a second. That song was produced and co-written by Suga, and it became one of the biggest hits in Korean music history, charting #1 across every major Korean platform, accumulating hundreds of millions of streams and winning multiple awards. And every single time that
that song plays anywhere in the world, Yoongi gets paid. And that's just one song. He produced That for PSY, PSY, the Gangstom legend. And that track was an absolute monster hit that dominated charts globally and racked up over 500 million YouTube views alone. And again, every play means more royalties flowing into the Suga empire. He's worked with Halsey on Suga's Interlude, he's collaborated with Juice WRLD, he produced for Highs, for Saran, whose song Wine that he produced won Best Soul and R&B track at the Melon Music Awards. He's produced for Max, for RM's solo work, for other Hybe artists. The list goes on, and each collaboration is another permanent revenue-generating asset in his portfolio. Now let's talk about his solo discography, because the August D trilogy is not just artistically brilliant, it's a financial juggernaut. August D, D2, and D-Day represent 3 full-length projects where Yoongi has primary songwriting and production credits on virtually every single track, meaning the royalty split on these projects is overwhelmingly in his favor compared to group releases where credits are shared more widely. And D-Day alone debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, which is absolutely insane for a Korean language album that's essentially a deeply personal art project about mental health, identity, and artistic freedom. And that chart position translates to massive sales revenue, plus ongoing streaming royalties that will continue generating income for literally decades. And here's the thing about songwriting royalties that makes this revenue stream so uniquely powerful compared to almost any other form of income. It never stops. It never expires during the copyright period, and it scales infinitely without requiring any additional work. When a doctor earns money, they have to show up to the hospital. When a brand ambassador earns money, they have to shoot campaigns and attend events. But when Min Yoongi earns songwriting royalties, he doesn't have to do anything because the work is already done. The songs already exist. They're already embedded in playlists, in people's daily routines, in the cultural consciousness of an entire generation. And they will continue generating revenue for 70 years after his death, according to Korean copyright law. Think about that for a second. Songs like Spring Day, which has been charting on Korean music platforms for over 9 years straight, or Dynamite, which crossed 1.5 billion streams on Spotify alone, or Butter, or Boy With Love, or Fake Love. Yoongi has credits on all of these, and these songs are essentially immortal revenue machines. According to industry analysts, top-tier songwriters with catalogs of this magnitude can generate anywhere from several million to tens of millions of dollars annually in royalties alone. And when you consider that Suga's catalog spans not just BTS group songs, but solo projects, outside productions, and collaborative works across multiple countries and languages, his annual royalty income almost certainly places him among the highest-earning songwriter-producers in all of Asia. And the truly genius part of this is that Yoongi understood this game from the very beginning. He wasn't just rapping and performing, he was deliberately and strategically building a catalog, learning production from scratch in a tiny studio when Big Hit was still a broke company, teaching himself to arrange, mix, and master tracks, insisting on being involved in the creative process at every level, not just for artistic integrity, but because he knew that credits equal ownership, and ownership equals generational wealth. And while other idols were focused on the immediate paycheck from a performance or a brand deal, Min Yoongi was playing the longest game in the industry, stacking song after song after song into a royalty portfolio that now functions like a financial fortress. The Korean Music Copyright Association has reportedly ranked him among the top-earning idol songwriters multiple years running, and industry insiders estimate that his combined publishing and royalty income stream alone generates more revenue annually than what several mid-tier K-pop entertainment companies make from their entire roster of artists. And if that doesn't make you look at that quiet, cat-loving, nap enthusiast genius in a completely different light, then I don't know what will. Because Min Yoongi didn't just write songs, he wrote himself a permanent paycheck. And honestly, that might be the most gangster thing any rapper has ever done.
Number 5, the solo touring juggernaut who proved one member can outgross entire companies. Now, this is where things start getting absolutely ridiculous because we've already talked about content revenue and royalty empires, but nothing, and I mean nothing in the music industry hits different like live touring revenue. This is the heavyweight division of money-making in entertainment. This is where the real astronomical numbers live. And when BTS went on their group hiatus, and everyone was wondering whether individual members could actually sustain that stadium-level energy and revenue on their own, one man stepped up and answered that question so definitively, so spectacularly, so overwhelmingly that he didn't just prove the doubters wrong, he made them look absolutely foolish. And that man is Jungkook, the eternal sunshine of BTS, the dance god, the energy reactor, J-Hope. And his solo touring revenue is a masterclass in how a single performer can generate more money from live shows than most entire K-pop entertainment companies make from all their revenue streams combined. Let's start from the moment that changed everything. Lollapalooza, Chicago, July 2022, when J-Hope became the first South Korean artist in history to headline the main stage at a major American music festival. And let's be absolutely clear about what that means, because Lollapalooza isn't some niche event. This is one of the most prestigious music festivals on the planet. Previous headliners include Metallica, The Weeknd, Billie Eilish, Foo Fighters. And for J-Hope to not only secure that headlining slot, but to absolutely demolish it with a performance so electric that music critics from Rolling Stone, Billboard, and Pitchfork were falling over themselves to write glowing reviews. That was the moment the entire Western music industry realized that BTS members aren't just boy band singers, they're legitimate global-tier solo performers who can command festival stages with the same authority as any rock legend or pop superstar. And that Lollapalooza performance wasn't just a cultural milestone, it was a financial statement. Festival headliner fees for artists of that caliber typically range from $1 to $5 million per appearance, and the promotional value, the media coverage, the brand positioning that came from that single weekend was worth exponentially more than the performance fee itself, because it established J-Hope as a viable solo touring act on the global stage. And that positioning is what made everything that came after financially possible. Now let's talk about the Hope on the Stage tour, because this is where the revenue numbers enter truly jaw-dropping territory. After his military discharge, J-Hope launched a full-scale solo world tour that spanned multiple continents, hitting major cities across Asia, North America, and beyond. And every single show sold out. Not mostly sold out, or nearly sold out, sold out. Like thousands and thousands of fans scrambling for tickets that disappeared in minutes, crashing ticketing websites, creating scenes at box offices that looked like something out of a disaster movie, except everyone was smiling and screaming. The economics of a tour like this are staggering when you break them down. A sold-out arena show in a major city generates anywhere from $3 to $10 million in gross revenue per night, depending on venue capacity and ticket pricing. And that's just ticket sales. On top of that, you have merchandise revenue, which for an artist with J-Hope's level of fandom dedication typically adds another 20 to 30% on top of ticket revenue. So you're looking at potentially millions more per show just from fans buying tour-exclusive hoodies, light sticks, photo cards, and accessories. And then there are the VIP packages, the sound check experiences, the premium seating tiers that can cost several $100s per ticket and sell out instantly. And when you multiply all of this across dozens of tour dates spanning months of performances, the total gross revenue from a world tour of this scale conservatively lands somewhere in the range of tens of millions to potentially over $100 million. And here's what makes J-Hope's touring revenue particularly remarkable. His shows aren't just concerts, they're full-scale production spectacles with elaborate stage designs, cutting-edge visual effects, complex choreography with full dance crews, custom lighting rigs, and theatrical elements that transform every venue into an immersive experience. And while that level of production does eat into margins with higher costs, it also justifies premium ticket pricing and creates the kind of social media moments that drive demand for future tours to even higher levels. It's a virtuous cycle where investment in production quality directly translates to increased future revenue. But the financial impact of J-Hope's touring extends far beyond just the direct ticket and merch numbers. Every city he tours in experiences what economists call the BTS effect, where local economies see massive spikes in hotel bookings, restaurant revenue, retail sales, and tourism activity as thousands of fans travel from around the world to attend shows. And while J-Hope doesn't directly pocket that economic impact, it makes him incredibly valuable to venue operators, city tourism boards, and corporate sponsors who are willing to pay premium rates to associate with his tours, adding yet another revenue layer through sponsorship deals and partnership agreements that can be worth millions on their own. And let's not forget the content revenue that tours generate. Concert films, behind-the-scenes documentaries, live albums, and streaming specials from tour footage create additional revenue streams that continue generating income long after the last encore, turning a finite tour into a perpetual money-making machine. Industry analysts have noted that J-Hope's solo touring numbers are comparable to established Western solo artists who have been building their touring career for a decade or more. And in the K-pop context, his solo touring revenue as a single solo artist exceeds what many mid-size K-pop companies generate from touring all of their groups combined in an entire year. And when you remember that this is a man who started as a street dancer from Gwangju, who almost got eliminated from the BTS trainee lineup and had to be personally convinced by RM to stay, the magnitude of what he's achieved becomes not just impressive, but genuinely emotionally overwhelming, because Jung Ho-suk didn't just become a performer, he became a one-man touring economy, and every sold-out arena, every screaming crowd, every record-breaking ticket sale is proof that Sunshine isn't just a vibe, it's a multi-million-dollar business.
Number 4. The walking billion-dollar billboard who makes fashion empires bow. Alright, now we're entering a completely different dimension of revenue, because everything we've talked about so far, content, royalties, touring, those all require some form of active work, creating something, performing something, producing something. But the revenue stream we're about to discuss operates on a principle so absurd, so almost supernaturally powerful, that it breaks every conventional rule of marketing and economics. And the member who embodies this revenue stream more than anyone else on the planet is Kim Taehyung, the man known as V, the face that launched 1,000 sold-out products, the human being who can literally generate millions of dollars in revenue just by existing in the vicinity of a product. We're talking about luxury brand ambassadorship and fashion endorsement revenue. And in the entire history of celebrity endorsements across all industries, across all countries, across all eras, there has arguably never been a single individual who moves the commercial needle as dramatically, as instantly, and as consistently as Kim Taehyung does. And the numbers to back up that claim are so outrageous that they almost sound fictional, except they're verified by actual sales data, market research, and financial reports from some of the most prestigious luxury houses in the world. Let's start with the partnership that sent shockwaves through the entire fashion industry. Celine, the legendary French luxury house, appointed V as their global brand ambassador. And from the moment that announcement dropped, the brand experienced what fashion industry analysts now openly refer to as the Taehyung effect, a phenomenon where literally anything associated with V sees an immediate and dramatic spike in consumer demand that defies all traditional marketing projections. When V attended the Celine show at Paris Fashion Week, the media coverage he generated wasn't just impressive, it was historically unprecedented. His arrival at the venue caused actual crowd control emergencies, paparazzi stampedes, and social media meltdowns that generated billions, yes, billions with a B, of media impressions within 24 hours. And the advertising equivalency value of that organic media coverage was estimated to be worth tens of millions of dollars, all from one man simply showing up and sitting in a front row seat looking impossibly beautiful in a Celine outfit. And this isn't a one-time fluke. This is a consistent, repeatable, almost scientifically reliable phenomenon. Every single time V is photographed wearing a specific item,
item, whether it's a Celine jacket, a pair of sunglasses, a bag, a scarf, literally anything. That item sells out across global markets within hours, sometimes within minutes. And we're not talking about affordable, fast fashion pieces. We're talking about luxury items priced at thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, selling out at a speed that luxury brands have never experienced before in their decades-long histories. The data analytics firm Launch Metrics, which specializes in measuring media impact value for fashion brands, has consistently ranked V among the highest impact celebrity ambassadors globally, not just in K-pop, not just in Asia, globally, placing him alongside names like Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, and Blackpink's Jennie as the individuals who generate the most measurable financial value for luxury brands. And multiple reports have indicated that V's media impact value for Celine from single events has exceeded $20 million, which is an absolutely staggering number when you consider that most celebrity endorsements are considered successful if they generate a fraction of that over an entire campaign period. And then there's Cartier, because V doesn't just dominate one luxury house, he dominates multiple. His association with Cartier as a brand ambassador added another dimension to his fashion revenue empire. And when V was seen wearing Cartier pieces, the brand experienced the same instant demand spikes, the same social media explosions, the same V wore it so now I need it consumer frenzy that has become the defining characteristic of his commercial influence. The financial structure of these luxury brand ambassador deals is something most people don't fully understand, so let me break it down. A global ambassadorship with a top-tier luxury house like Celine or Cartier isn't just about taking some pretty photos and attending a fashion show. These are multi-million-dollar contracts that typically include a base ambassador fee that industry insiders estimate ranges from $5 to $15 million or more annually for someone of V's caliber, plus appearance fees for events and shows, plus royalties or bonuses tied to measurable sales increases, plus gifted products and exclusive access that have their own tangible value. And when you add all of these components together across multiple luxury partnerships, the total annual revenue from brand ambassadorships alone can easily reach the tens of millions of dollars, a figure that would represent the entire annual revenue of many small to mid-size K-pop entertainment companies. But what truly sets V's brand revenue apart from virtually every other celebrity endorser in the world is the organic, authentic nature of his fashion influence. Most celebrities have teams of stylists who carefully curate their public image and dress them in sponsored pieces according to contractual obligations. And while V certainly has professional styling support, his genuine passion for fashion, his personal aesthetic that effortlessly blends vintage, high fashion, and streetwear, his natural visual presence that photographers and designers describe as once in a generation, all of this means that his fashion influence extends far beyond his official partnerships. When V is spotted wearing any brand, even brands he has no formal relationship with, those items experience sales surges, and fashion industry experts have estimated that V's total annual commercial impact across all brands, official and unofficial, reaches into the hundreds of millions of dollars in generated revenue, making him not just a brand ambassador, but essentially a one-man fashion economy. Korean media have documented hundreds of instances of the V sold-out effect, where items ranging from a simple beanie to a luxury coat to an obscure vintage piece that he wore once in an airport were completely cleaned out of inventory across online and physical stores within hours of photos circulating, and retailers have actually started monitoring V's public appearances and social media in real time so they can prepare inventory adjustments before the inevitable demand to Sami hits. And let's talk about what this means for HYBE's overall revenue picture, because V's brand endorsement income doesn't just benefit V personally, it contributes significantly to HYBE's artist-related revenue segment. And when analysts look at the endorsement revenue that BTS members generate, V's luxury fashion partnerships consistently represent some of the highest value deals in the entire portfolio, contributing disproportionately to a revenue line that HYBE's financial reports show generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually across all their artists. The fact that a single individual can walk into a room, wear an outfit, smile at some cameras, and in so doing generate more measurable commercial value than entire marketing departments departments with budgets of millions can produce through traditional advertising campaigns, that's not just impressive, that's a fundamental disruption of how the fashion and luxury industries understand the relationship between celebrity and commerce. And Kim Taehyung isn't just at the center of that disruption, he is the disruption, the beautiful, deep-voiced, art-loving disruption that makes fashion executives around the world simultaneously grateful for his existence and terrified of what happens to their sales numbers if he ever stops wearing their clothes.
Number 3, the intellectual revenue engine who turned culture into cash. Okay, I need you to really pay attention here because this revenue stream is unlike anything else on this list, unlike anything else in the entire K-pop industry, and honestly, unlike anything else in the entire global entertainment landscape, period. Because while most idols generate revenue through singing, dancing, modeling, and endorsing products, the member we're about to discuss created a revenue stream so unprecedented, so intellectually sophisticated, and so culturally significant that economists and cultural analysts have literally had to invent new terminology to describe its impact. And that member is Kim Namjoon, the leader of BTS, the man known as RM, and his revenue stream is nothing less than the monetization of intellectual and cultural influence on a scale that the entertainment industry has never seen before. We're talking about a phenomenon where a single individual's passion for art, literature, philosophy, and culture has become so commercially powerful that it moves entire industries, transforms tourism patterns, resurrects forgotten artists' careers, and generates hundreds of millions of dollars in economic activity that flows through museums, galleries, publishing houses, cultural institutions, and educational platforms. And if that sounds like an exaggeration, I promise you it's actually an understatement, because the data behind the RM effect is genuinely one of the most extraordinary case studies in modern cultural economics. Let's start with the museum phenomenon, because this is where the numbers get truly insane. Kim Namjoon has a well-documented, deeply genuine passion for visual art. He spends his free time visiting galleries and museums around the world, and he shares his experiences with his massive global following. And what happens when RM posts about visiting a museum or mentions an artist he admires is nothing short of an economic earthquake. When RM visited the Art Institute of Chicago and shared photos on social media, the museum reported a measurable spike in visitor numbers in the following weeks, with a noticeable increase in Korean and international tourists, specifically citing RM's visit as their reason for coming. And this isn't an isolated incident. This is a pattern that has repeated itself dozens of times across institutions worldwide. The National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul, also known as MMCA, saw visitor numbers explode after RM's repeated visits and social media posts about the museum, with reports indicating increases of up to 30% in certain periods, directly attributable to the RM effect. And the museum actually appointed him as an honorary ambassador because they recognized that his cultural influence was generating more visitor traffic in more public engagement than their entire annual marketing budget could achieve. The same thing happened at the Yoon-Hyung-Koon Estates and Museum. Yoon-Hyung-Koon was a brilliant but relatively obscure Korean abstract painter whose work was known primarily within specialist art circles. And then RM started visiting his exhibitions, posting about his admiration for Yoon's work, and suddenly this forgotten master was trending worldwide. His exhibitions saw record attendance, his artwork values increased at auction, and an entirely new generation of young people around the world were Googling Korean abstract art for the first time in their lives. And the economic ripple effect of that single act of genuine artistic appreciation generated millions of dollars in cultural tourism revenue, art sales, and institutional funding. And this effect extends far beyond museums into the publishing world, where RM has created what industry insiders call the most powerful book recommendation engine since Oprah's book club. When RM is seen reading a book, mentions a book in an interview, or includes a book in the background of a photo, that book's sales spike dramatically across global markets. Publishers have reported sales increases of 300 to 500% for titles associated with RM, and Korean bookstores have literally created RM's reading list sections because they know that stocking the books he recommends is basically a guaranteed sellout.
The titles he's recommended span philosophy, psychology, literature, poetry, and cultural criticism, from Haruki Murakami to Kim Soo-hyun to Hermann Hesse, and each recommendation creates a commercial ripple that benefits authors, publishers, bookstores, and the entire literary ecosystem in ways that are genuinely quantifiable. Now let's talk about how this cultural influence translates directly into revenue for the BTS empire, because RM's intellectual positioning has been absolutely crucial in elevating BTS from successful boy band to global cultural institution, and that elevation has unlocked partnership and revenue opportunities that would have been completely impossible for a conventional K-pop act. BTS's multiple appearances at the UN General Assembly, their partnership with UNICEF for the Love Myself campaign, their invitation to speak at the White House, their address to the South Korean National Assembly, all of these prestige cultural moments happen largely because RM's articulate, thoughtful, intellectually substantial public persona gave BTS a credibility that transcended entertainment, and each of these moments generated massive global media coverage worth hundreds of millions of dollars in brand value. His solo music is another dimension of this cultural revenue stream. Indigo, his first solo album, wasn't just a music release, it was a multimedia art project that involved collaborations with visual artists, poets, and creators from completely different disciplines, and the album's rollout included gallery exhibitions, art installations, and cultural events that generated revenue not just from music sales and streaming, but from ticket sales, art sales, merchandise tied to artistic collaborations, and institutional partnerships, creating a hybrid revenue model that blurred the lines between music, art, and cultural experience in a way that no K-pop artist had ever attempted before. And then Right Place, Wrong Person continued this trajectory, proving that there's a sustainable and growing commercial market for music that positions itself at the intersection of art, philosophy, and pop culture. But here's the truly staggering part that most people don't grasp: the total economic impact of RM's cultural influence. When you add up the museum tourism revenue, the publishing sales, the art market movement, the institutional partnership values, the premium brand positioning for BTS, the speaking engagement fees, the cultural content revenue, and solo music sales, the aggregate number reaches into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And while RM doesn't personally pocket all of that revenue, obviously, the portion that flows through HYBE's financial statements as artist-related income and brand premium is substantial enough that financial analysts have specifically cited RM's cultural positioning as a key differentiator in HYBE's market valuation compared to competitor entertainment companies. South Korea's Ministry of Culture has even studied the BTS cultural effect on national tourism and soft power economics, and RM's specific contribution to that cultural capital through his museum visits, his intellectual public image, his UN speeches, his literary recommendations, has been identified as a significant driver of what the Korean government estimates is a multi-billion-dollar annual BTS contribution to the national economy. And what makes all of this so beautifully authentic is that Namjoon isn't doing any of this as a calculated revenue strategy. He genuinely loves art. He genuinely reads philosophy for pleasure. He genuinely spends his free days wandering through museums because it feeds his soul. And the fact that this genuine passion has accidentally created one of the most unique and valuable revenue streams in entertainment history is perhaps the most Namjoon thing possible. The man who taught himself English by watching Friends reruns, who became the leader of the biggest band in the world, who addresses the United Nations with the eloquence of a seasoned diplomat, somehow also turned his weekend museum hobby into a multi-hundred-million-dollar economic force. And if that isn't the most inspiring thing you've heard today, then I genuinely don't know what to tell you.
Number 2. The streaming supernova whose digital revenue defies all logic. Okay, we are now in the top 2 and the air is getting thin up here because the revenue numbers we're about to discuss aren't just impressive, they're genuinely unprecedented in K-pop history. They're the kind of numbers that make industry executives question their understanding of how the modern music market works. And the member who commands this position does so with a level of digital dominance so absolute, so relentless, so statistically anomalous that data analysts at streaming platforms have openly admitted they've never seen anything like it from any K-pop artist. And that member is Park Jimin, the man with the voice that melts steel, the dancer who moves like gravity is optional, and the solo artist who turned digital music streaming into a personal ATM machine that never stops dispensing cash. We're talking about digital streaming and solo music sales revenue. And to understand why Jimin sits this high on our list, you need to understand something fundamental about how the modern music industry works. In 2024 and beyond, streaming isn't just one way to make money in music, it is the music business. Streaming revenue now accounts for over 80% of the entire global recorded music market, which was valued at over $28 billion in 2023. According to the IFPI Global Music Report. And the artists who dominate streaming platforms don't just do well financially, they essentially control the financial heartbeat of the entire industry. And Park Jimin doesn't just participate in the streaming economy, he absolutely dominates it in a way that has rewritten the record books and forced the entire K-pop industry to recalibrate their understanding of what a solo artist can achieve. Let's start with the moment that announced Jimin's arrival as a solo force to the entire world. March 2023, the release of Face, his debut solo album, and the lead single Like Crazy, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Park Jimin the first Korean solo artist ever in the history of the chart to achieve that position. Let that sink in for a moment. The Hot 100 has been running since 1958, 65 years of charting, and in all that time across all the incredible Korean solo artists who have tried, Jimin was the first to reach the summit. And that achievement wasn't just a cultural milestone, it was a financial earthquake, because a #1 debut on the Hot 100 triggers a cascade of revenue multipliers. Premium playlist placement across every streaming platform globally, exponentially increased radio play with associated performance royalties, synchronization licensing opportunities from film and television, and a surge in catalog streaming, where new listeners go back and discover an artist's entire body of work. And all of that happened for Jimin simultaneously, creating a revenue superstorm. The streaming numbers for Like Crazy alone were staggering. The song accumulated hundreds of millions of streams across platforms within its first year, and on Spotify specifically, Jimin became one of the most streamed K-pop solo artists in the platform's history. And remember, every single stream generates revenue. Spotify pays between roughly 3 to 5 milliseconds per stream, depending on the market and subscription tier. And when you're generating hundreds of millions of streams, those fractions of cents compound into millions and millions of dollars in pure streaming royalty revenue. But here's where Jimin's story goes from impressive to absolutely mind-blowing. Most artists who score a #1 hit experience what the industry calls front-loading, where the majority of streams and sales happen in the first few weeks and then rapidly decline. But Jimin's music has demonstrated extraordinary longevity on streaming platforms. His songs continue to accumulate massive daily streams months and even years after release. And that sustained streaming performance is what separates artists who have a hit from artists who build streaming empires. And then came Muse in 2024, his second solo album. And if Face proved Jimin could compete at the highest level, then Muse proved he could do it again, and arguably even bigger. The lead single, Who, didn't just chart well, it became a genuine global streaming phenomenon that transcended the K-pop market entirely. The song went viral on TikTok with the choreography and the catchy hook, capturing the attention of mainstream audiences who had never listened to K-pop before. And Who racked up streaming numbers at a pace that put it in competition with the biggest Western pop releases of the year. Who debuted in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 and demonstrated the kind of sustained streaming performance that makes it one of the most commercially successful K-pop solo releases of all time. And on Spotify, the track was consistently generating millions of daily streams for weeks and months after release, a level of streaming consistency that most artists can only dream of.
Now, let's talk about the actual revenue math, because this is where your jaw should officially hit the floor. Between Face, Muse, and all associated tracks, Jimin's solo streaming catalog has accumulated billions of combined streams across all platforms. And when you calculate the revenue generated from those streams using industry-standard payout rates, the total digital streaming revenue from Jimin's solo music alone reaches well into the tens of millions of dollars. And that's just streaming. We haven't even factored in digital download sales, where Jimin consistently ranks among the top-selling artists on iTunes and other digital storefronts across multiple countries, or physical album sales, where both Face and Muse sold millions of copies each, with Face surpassing 2 million sales and Muse following a similar trajectory, generating additional tens of millions in physical sales revenue. And here's the detail that really puts Jimin's digital revenue dominance into perspective. According to Hybe's financial reports, the music segment, which includes album sales, streaming royalties, and digital downloads, generates billions of won annually, and industry analysts have estimated that Jimin's solo releases consistently contribute a disproportionately large share to that revenue line, with his releases consistently ranking among Hybe's highest-performing individual projects in terms of digital revenue generation. His Spotify monthly listener count has regularly placed him among the most listened-to K-pop artists on the platform globally, competing not just with other K-pop soloists, but with mainstream Western artists for playlist real estate and algorithmic recommendations. And that global streaming reach means his revenue isn't concentrated in any single market, but flows from dozens of countries simultaneously, creating a diversified digital income stream that's remarkably resilient to market fluctuations in any single region. The synchronization and licensing revenue is another layer that most people overlook. When a song reaches the level of cultural penetration that Like Crazy and Who have achieved, it becomes attractive for use in television shows, films, commercials, and other media, and each synchronization license generates fees that can range from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars per placement, adding a yet another revenue tributary to Jimin's already overflowing digital river. And what makes this entire revenue stream so powerful is its compounding nature. Unlike a brand deal that ends when the contract expires, or a tour that stops generating revenue when the final show wraps, streaming revenue from Jimin's catalog will continue flowing for years and decades to come. Every new fan who discovers BTS will eventually explore Jimin's solo work. Every playlist algorithm will continue serving his songs to new listeners. Every emotional moment in someone's life that becomes associated with a Jimin song ensures that song gets replayed over and over again. And all of that perpetual engagement translates to perpetual revenue, making Park Jimin not just a hitmaker, but a one-man streaming dynasty whose digital revenue would make most K-pop companies weep with envy if they could even comprehend the scale of what this man has built with nothing but his voice, his artistry, and an almost supernatural ability to create songs that people simply cannot stop playing.
Number 1. The global commercial titan whose revenue rivals entire corporations. This is it, the summit, the absolute pinnacle, the number 1 spot on our list. And if you've made it this far thinking you've already heard the most insane revenue numbers in K-pop history, then I need you to take a deep breath, sit down if you're standing, and prepare yourself, because what we're about to discuss doesn't just top everything else on this list. It exists in a completely different stratosphere of commercial power, a level so absurdly, almost incomprehensibly massive that it forces you to question whether we're still talking about a K-pop idol or whether we've accidentally stumbled into a conversation about a Fortune 500 company. And the member who sits alone at the very top of this mountain, the individual whose global brand partnership and commercial revenue stream is so overwhelming that it makes the entire K-pop industry look like a lemonade stand by comparison, is none other than Jungkook, the golden maknae, the man who doesn't just break records, he makes them look like they were never even difficult. And if you thought you understood how big Jungkook's commercial impact was, trust me, you didn't. Nobody did. Not until the numbers started coming in and the entire entertainment industry collectively lost its mind. Let's begin with the single moment that elevated Jungkook from biggest K-pop star to one of the most commercially valuable entertainers alive on planet Earth. November 20th, 2022, the opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, when Jungkook stood on that stage in front of an estimated global television audience of over 2 billion people and performed Dreamers, and in doing so, became the first K-pop idol in history to headline the opening ceremony of the most watched sporting event in human existence. 2 billion viewers. Let that number roll around in your brain for a second. 2 billion. That's roughly 1/4 of every living human being on Earth watching one person perform on one stage at one moment in time. And the commercial value of that single performance is almost impossible to calculate because it transcended every conventional metric of celebrity exposure. The advertising equivalency value of that kind of global visibility, where typically a 30-second commercial during the World Cup costs millions of dollars and reaches only a fraction of the total viewership, has been estimated by media valuation firms at potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in brand exposure. Except Jungkook didn't need that exposure. He earned it by being so undeniably, universally, magnetically compelling that FIFA chose him out of every artist on the planet to represent their flagship event to the entire world. And that choice validated what the K-pop industry already knew, but the mainstream global entertainment world was just beginning to understand. Jungkook is the single most bankable commercial asset in Korean entertainment history. And if the World Cup was the moment the world woke up to Jungkook's commercial gravitational pull, then what came after was the supernova explosion that turned that awareness into cold, hard, staggering revenue. Calvin Klein. When Jungkook was announced as Calvin Klein's global brand ambassador, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. Their brand's social media engagement spiked by over 2,000%. Their website traffic surged so dramatically that servers struggled to handle the load. And the actual sales impact was something Calvin Klein executives have described in terms reserved for once-in-a-generation retail events. When Jungkook's Calvin Klein campaign images dropped, products featured in the campaign sold out within hours across multiple countries simultaneously, and industry analysts estimated that his impact on Calvin Klein's revenue in the quarters following the partnership announcement was worth tens of millions of dollars in incremental sales, a return on investment so absurdly high that it reportedly sent shockwaves through the fashion and luxury brand industry and triggered a gold rush of brands scrambling to sign K-pop ambassadors in hopes of replicating even a fraction of the Jungkook effect. But Calvin Klein was just one piece of a commercial empire that spans virtually every major consumer category, from Samsung, where BTS's endorsement deal was reportedly worth tens of millions of dollars annually, and Jungkook's individual contribution as the most viral and commercially impactful member was disproportionately massive, to beverage partnerships, to lifestyle brands, to technology companies. Jungkook's endorsement portfolio reads like a who's who of global corporate giants, and each partnership doesn't just generate a flat ambassadorship fee, it triggers cascading revenue effects, where his association with a brand increases sales, stock price, social media following, and brand equity in ways that compound over time. And then, we need to talk about Golden, because Jungkook's solo album wasn't just a music release, it was a commercial event on a scale that the music industry rarely witnesses from any artist, let alone a K-pop soloist. 7, featuring Lotto, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in its very first week, broke the Spotify record for the most single-day streams for a song at the time of its release, with over 16 million streams in 24 hours, and went on to spend multiple consecutive weeks at #1 on the Hot 100, a feat that even most established Western superstars struggle to achieve. The commercial revenue generated by 7 alone, from streaming, digital sales, radio play, licensing, and associated brand activations, was estimated to be in the tens of millions of dollars.
And then Standing Next to You came and delivered another massive hit with its Michael Jackson-inspired retro funk sound that dominated charts globally and generated hundreds of millions of additional streams. And 3D with Jack Harlow added yet another commercially dominant single to a solo debut run that industry analysts have called one of the most commercially successful in modern pop music history, regardless of language or origin. The album Golden itself sold millions of copies physically and digitally, charted in the top 5 of the Billboard 200, and generated a total revenue footprint from all combined sources, sales, streaming, licensing, merchandise, brand tie-ins, that conservative estimates place it well over $100 million, a number that would represent the entire annual revenue of many publicly traded entertainment companies. Now, here's where we get into the truly mind-melting territory of Jungkook's commercial impact, because his effect on HYBE's stock price. Because Jungkook isn't just a revenue generator, he's a market mover in the most literal financial sense. Multiple financial analyses have documented that HYBE's stock price shows measurable positive correlation with Jungkook's major announcements and activities. When Seven debuted at number 1, HYBE's market capitalization saw gains of hundreds of millions of dollars. When the Calvin Klein partnership was announced, analysts noted positive market sentiment, and when Golden was released and performed commercially beyond even the most optimistic projections, HYBE's stock responded accordingly. Financial analysts at major Korean securities firms have published research notes specifically identifying Jungkook as a key value driver for HYBE's stock, and when you consider that HYBE's market capitalization fluctuates around several billion dollars, and that a meaningful percentage of that valuation is attributable to BTS's commercial activities, in which Jungkook is the single most dominant commercial force, you begin to understand that Jungkook's revenue impact isn't measured in millions, it's measured in the billions of dollars of corporate value that his activities support and enhance. The man's social media reach amplifies all of this to an almost unfair degree. As one of the most followed individuals from Asia on Instagram with tens of millions of followers, every post he makes, every product he's seen with, every brand he interacts with, receives exposure to an audience so massive and so commercially engaged that brands essentially get a Super Bowl commercial's worth of visibility from a single Instagram post, and the economic value of that organic reach over the course of a year dwarfs what most companies spend on their entire annual marketing budgets. And what truly cements Jungkook at the number 1 position on this list is the totality of his commercial ecosystem. It's not just one big brand deal. It's not just one hit song. It's not just one viral moment. It's the FIFA World Cup performance reaching 2 billion viewers, plus Calvin Klein generating tens of millions in incremental sales, plus Seven breaking all-time streaming records, plus Golden selling millions of copies, plus Standing Next to You becoming a global hit, plus stock market impact measured in billions, plus social media reach generating hundreds of millions in advertising equivalency value, plus merchandise sales, plus licensing revenue, plus performance fees, plus the incalculable brand premium that his association brings to every company he touches. And when you add all of that together, the total commercial revenue ecosystem surrounding Jungkook is so vast, so multidimensional, and so overwhelmingly dominant that it doesn't just generate more money than most K-pop companies, it generates more measurable commercial value than many publicly traded corporations across any industry. Jungkook started as a 15-year-old kid from Busan who chose a small, struggling entertainment company because he was inspired by a man named Kim Nam-jun, and now he stands as arguably the most commercially powerful solo entertainer to ever emerge from the Asian entertainment industry, a living, breathing commercial supernova whose revenue impact reshapes markets, moves stock prices, sells out products across continents, and generates numbers so large that they make financial analysts double-check their calculators. And that is why Jungkook is our undisputed, unquestionable, absolutely unshakable number 1.
And there you have it, the complete breakdown, the full picture, the 7 revenue streams that prove BTS isn't just a boy band, they're a multi-billion-dollar economic phenomenon operating on a level that the entertainment industry has never seen before and might never see again. Let's take a step back and really absorb what we just went through, because when you line up all 7 of these revenue streams side by side, the sheer magnitude of what these 7 men from South Korea have built is genuinely overwhelming. You've got Jin turning entertainment content into a cash-generating machine that keeps platforms profitable and audiences addicted. You've got Suga constructing a songwriting royalty empire so vast that money flows into his accounts every second of every day from songs that will generate income for decades after we're all gone. You've got J-Hope proving that a single solo performer can fill stadiums and generate touring revenue that rivals entire company rosters. You've got V walking into rooms and making luxury fashion empires richer just by breathing in the direction of their products. You've got RM doing something nobody in K-pop has ever done before by turning intellectual and cultural passion into a revenue stream that moves museum attendance, book sales, and art markets across the globe. You've got Jimin dominating the digital streaming landscape with numbers so massive that his solo catalog alone outperforms what most entire entertainment companies can generate. And sitting right at the top, you've got Jungkook, whose global commercial impact is so colossal, so all-encompassing, so relentlessly dominant that it doesn't just compete with K-pop companies, it competes with multinational corporations. But here's the thing that makes this story so much more than just a list of impressive numbers. Every single one of these revenue streams was built on authenticity, not on corporate strategy, not on manufactured hype, not on some marketing algorithm, but on 7 real human beings being genuinely, passionately, unapologetically themselves. Jin didn't study content strategy, he just loved making people laugh. Suga didn't hire a financial advisor to tell him to stack songwriting credits, he just couldn't stop creating music. J-Hope didn't commission a market analysis before touring, he just needed to dance in front of people who love him. V didn't calculate the ROI of wearing Celine, he just loves fashion. RM didn't monetize his museum visits on purpose, he just genuinely loves art. Jimin didn't engineer a streaming algorithm, he just poured his soul into songs that people couldn't stop playing. And Jungkook didn't strategize his way to the World Cup stage, he was just so undeniably talented that the world came knocking. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe the reason BTS generates more money than most K-pop companies isn't because they're better at business. It's because they were never trying to be businessmen in the first place. They were just 7 kids from a broke company who loved music, loved each other, loved their fans, and worked harder than anyone thought was humanly possible. And the money, the records, the history-making achievements, all of that was just the universe's way of rewarding authenticity on a scale that matched the authenticity itself. They came from nothing, a company that couldn't pay its electricity bills, trainees who shared one bedroom and ate cheap meals, a debut that was ignored by the mainstream industry, and they turned all of that struggle, all of that hunger, all of that refusal to give up into a global empire worth billions, and they did it together, not as 7 solo acts competing for the spotlight, but as one unit where each member's individual strength amplifies everyone else's success. So the next time someone tells you BTS is just another K-pop group, the next time someone reduces them to catchy songs and synchronized choreography, you show them this list, you show them the numbers, you show them 7 revenue streams, each powerful enough to dwarf entire companies, and you ask them to name any other group in history, any genre, any era, any country that has achieved anything even remotely close to this, and watch their silence become the loudest answer in the room. BTS didn't just change K-pop, they didn't just change the music industry, they changed what we thought was possible, and the revenue numbers are just the receipts to prove it. If this blew your mind, smash that like button, share this with every ARMY you know, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me which revenue stream surprised you the most. Was it Suga's royalty empire, RM's cultural influence, Jungkook's commercial dominance? Let me know, because I read every single comment. And until next time, remember,
remember, the only thing more powerful than money is 7 people who genuinely believe in each other, and that is something no revenue report can ever fully capture. Peace.